Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something a little different. We are going to travel back in time, not as kings or generals, but as one of the most overlooked figures in history, a Silk Road merchant. We're going to feel the grit of the desert between our toes and the weight of silk on our backs. And let's be honest, dropped into the middle of the Tang Dynasty's capital, Chang'an, you'd probably not survive the first day without a guide. Lucky for you, that's what I'm here for. I'm so happy we can share this time together again in the world of stories. Whether you're winding down for the night or just looking for a quiet moment in a busy day, I hope my voice can offer you a little bit of peace. If you enjoy what we do here and love getting lost in a good story, it would mean the world to me if you'd consider hitting that like button or subscribing to the channel. Honestly, every single one of your likes and subscriptions is a huge encouragement. It's what keeps me going and inspires me to continue creating new stories for all of you. Go ahead and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always a quiet joy to see how this little community of ours spans across so many different corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you is the noise. It's not just loud, it's a physical presence, a wall of sound that presses in from all sides. You're standing at the entrance to the West Market of Chang'an, the sprawling, chaotic heart of international trade for what is, right now, the largest and most cosmopolitan city on the planet. Forget your quiet, sterile supermarkets. This place is a living, breathing kaleidoscope of humanity. The air is thick with the scent of 1,000 stories. Roasting lamb, pungent cumin, fragrant sandalwood. And underneath it all, the earthy, slightly sweet smell of livestock and unpaved, dusty earth. You shuffle your feet, the soft soles of your cloth shoes sinking slightly into the dirt. Around you, people shout in languages you can't even begin to place. A man with a magnificent curly beard and a high-peaked hat tries to sell a jeweled dagger to a stoic-looking Tibetan. A group of women in vibrant flowing robes giggle behind their hands as they examine a bolt of shimmering fabric. The architectural marvels of Chang'an, its grand pagodas and sweeping tiled roofs, are visible over the market walls, but in here, it's a world unto itself. This is where fortunes are made and lost, where the known world comes to trade. But you're not here for jewels or spices, not yet anyway. You're here for something far more important, something bigger, furrier, and frankly, a lot more cantankerous. You're here to buy a camel. You follow the signs, or rather the smells, to the livestock section. The din changes. The cacophony of human haggling is now layered with the braying of donkeys, the clucking of chickens, and the deep, guttural groans of the creatures you seek. And there they are. A whole section of the market is dedicated to them, Bactrian camels. They stand in dusty pens, looking utterly unimpressed with the chaos surrounding them. These aren't the slender, one-humped dromedaries you might picture in the Arabian desert. These are the heavy-duty, all-terrain vehicles of the Silk Road. They are massive, with shaggy, tan-colored fur that looks like it's in the process of a very slow, very uneven molt. And of course, there are the two humps. They aren't the neat, pyramid-like humps of cartoons. They're more like lopsided furry sacks, slumping slightly to either side, jiggling when the animal moves. A wizened old man with a face like a dried apricot and eyes that have seen more sandstorms than you've seen rainy days gestures for you to come closer. He's the camel broker. You need a good one. Not just any camel, but a strong, healthy male in its prime, one that can carry hundreds of pounds of cargo for thousands of miles. Your life and your investment will literally rest on its back. You walk towards a particularly large specimen. It turns its head slowly, its long, ridiculously lush eyelashes blinking at you with an expression of profound indifference. It's chewing, a slow, sideways grinding motion of its powerful jaw. It looks philosophical, as if it's contemplating the meaning of existence and has concluded that you are not a significant part of it. The broker starts his sales pitch, a rapid-fire stream of praise for the animal's strong legs, its broad feet perfect for sand, and its placid temperament. He pats one of its humps, which wobbles like a giant, hairy waterbed. How much did a prime Bactrian camel cost back then? Well, that's a question historians are still trying to pin down with absolute certainty. Records are inconsistent, and prices fluctuated wildly with the seasons, demand, and the animal's health. It could range from a handful of silver coins to the equivalent of a small fortune, a major investment for any aspiring merchant. There was no fixed price tag here. It was all about the haggle. You cautiously reach out a hand to stroke the camel's neck. Its fur is surprisingly coarse. The animal stops chewing for a moment, turns its head, and lets out a low, rumbling groan from deep in its chest. The broker grins, showing a few remaining teeth. He likes you, he says, though you're not entirely convinced. The camel then opens its mouth and emits a foul, grassy breath that makes you recoil. The broker chuckles and issues a word of warning. He tells you that if it really gets annoyed, it won't just spit saliva at you. Oh no. It will dredge up the semi-digested contents of its first stomach, a vile green cud, and project it at you with surprising accuracy. This charming tidbit of information is a well-known and often personally experienced fact among camel handlers. It's their ultimate weapon of disgust. You spend the better part of an hour inspecting the animal, running your hands over its legs, checking its teeth, and looking for any sign of sickness or injury. This isn't a casual purchase. This is you choosing your partner, your transport, and your best hope for survival all in one. Finally, after a long, drawn-out negotiation involving more gestures than words, a price is agreed upon. You count out the heavy strings of coins, your hands trembling slightly. The deal is done. The broker hands you a simple lead rope. The big, shaggy creature is now yours. It blinks at you again, that same look of stoic indifference. It has no idea of the journey that lies ahead for both of you, across deserts and over mountains. But as you stand there in the clamor of the West Market, holding the rope that connects you to this magnificent, slightly smelly beast, you feel a flicker of something. Not just the anxiety of the road ahead, but the beginning of a bond. This is your camel, and your journey has just begun. You tug gently on the lead rope, and to your surprise, the massive creature follows with a slow, deliberate plod. Leading a camel through the crowded lanes of the West Market is an experience in itself. People instinctively part ways, not out of politeness, but out of a healthy respect for the sheer size of your new companion. It's like navigating a narrow channel with a barge. You are the tiny tugboat, and it is the main event. The camel's head is held high, its gaze sweeping over the chaos with that same air of regal detachment, as if this whole noisy affair is a minor inconvenience on its path to more important, sand-based meditations. Eventually, you navigate your way out of the market's pandemonium and into the slightly more orderly streets leading to a caravanserai. This is a traveler's inn, but built on a grander scale. It's a large, walled compound with a massive central courtyard, stables, and simple rooms ringing the perimeter. This is the staging ground for journeys like yours, a place where merchants rest, repair gear, and form convoys. The air here is calmer, the sounds more muted. The low murmur of different languages, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer in the distance, and the soft, rhythmic chewing of dozens of camels. You find an empty spot in the courtyard and loosely tie the rope to a sturdy wooden post. For the first time, you can truly take in the animal you've staked your future on. It's not just a beast of burden, it's a walking, breathing marvel of evolutionary engineering, a masterpiece of natural design perfected over millennia for the very journey you're about to undertake. You start with its head. Those long, elegant eyelashes you noticed earlier aren't just for show. They are a double-layered, interlocking fringe that acts as a perfect sand screen. When the wind whips up, your camel can essentially seal its eyes shut, peering through the lashes as if through a set of natural Venetian blinds. This is a well-known feature, a classic bit of camel trivia every merchant knows and appreciates. You then look at its nostrils. They aren't just simple openings, they are muscular slits that it can close completely. No grain of sand gets in unless the camel allows it. Furthermore, they have a complex internal structure that extracts moisture from its own breath before it exhales, conserving every precious drop of water. Its ears are small and lined with thick fur for the same reason, to keep the sand out. Your gaze travels down to its mouth, which is currently engaged in its favorite pastime of chewing cud. The inside of its mouth is lined with tough, leathery skin, allowing it to eat the thorny, salt-encrusted plants that other animals wouldn't dare touch. It can chew on a spiky cactus as if it were a soft blade of grass. And then the humps. This is where you get to debunk a common myth. You've heard travelers from distant lands, particularly those unfamiliar with the Bactrian, whisper that the humps are giant water tanks. It's a romantic notion, but utterly false. You press your hand against one. It's soft and fleshy, not sloshy. These humps are concentrated stores of fat. They are the camel's pantry, its biological power banks. On a long journey with scarce food, the camel's body will metabolize this fat, converting it into both energy and, as a byproduct, water. A healthy, well-fed camel has firm, upright humps. As it expends its energy reserves, the humps will soften and shrink, sometimes even flopping over to one side. The state of your camel's humps is a direct, visible gauge of its health and endurance. But the camel's most incredible secret is one you can't see. It's a strange and fascinating bit of knowledge passed between veteran traders. It lies in its very blood. Unlike your own round, donut-shaped red blood cells, a camel's are oval. This is a microscopic yet life-saving adaptation. When a camel is severely dehydrated, its blood can thicken, making it difficult for the heart to pump. The oval shape of its cells allows them to continue flowing easily, even in a sludgy, dehydrated state. Even more remarkably, when the camel finally reaches water and drinks a massive amount, say over 100 liters in just 10 minutes, these oval cells can swell to more than twice their normal size without bursting, unlike your own fragile cells. It's a biological superpower that allows it to tolerate extreme cycles of dehydration and rehydration. As you're examining the broad, leathery pads on its feet, 2 large toes on each foot that spread out like snowshoes to distribute its weight on soft sand, the very feature that earns it the name Ship of the Desert, an older merchant with a sun-cured face wanders over. He nods at your new purchase. "A fine beast," he says, in a heavily accented but understandable tongue. He asks where you think its ancestors first came from. This, you know, is a topic of great debate around the campfires. The historical consensus is that the Bactrian camel was domesticated long before the Silk Road was formally established. But the exact origin is fuzzy, a point that even the most learned scholars and experienced traders are still arguing about. The old merchant claims they were first tamed by nomads in the mountainous regions of Bactria itself, modern-day Afghanistan. But you've heard another theory from a Sogdian trader who insisted that the evidence points further north and east to the harsh, arid landscapes of the Gobi Desert. No one knows for sure. The camel's own history is as vast and unwritten as the deserts it crosses. You thank the old man for his thoughts and turn back to your camel. You take out a coarse brush you bought at the market and begin to gently groom its shaggy coat, removing burrs and dust. The camel lets out another low, rumbling groan, but this time it feels less like a complaint and more like a sigh of contentment. It's a small gesture, but it's the start of your dialogue. In the fading light of the caravanserai, surrounded by the quiet promise of the journey to come, you realize you haven't just bought a tool. You've acquired a partner, a complex, resilient, and deeply mysterious creature whose secrets are the very key to your survival. The next morning, the caravanserai wakes before the sun. The pre-dawn air is cool and still, carrying the sounds of men stirring and animals shifting. This is the hour of preparation. Today, you learn one of the most crucial skills of a Silk Road merchant: how to pack your camel. This isn't like packing a suitcase. It's a precise, almost ritualistic process, a blend of engineering and animal psychology that has been refined over centuries. An experienced caravaneer, a man named Qasim with powerful rope-scarred hands and a patient demeanor, has agreed to guide you. He leads you and your camel to a clear area of the courtyard where your goods are piled. You've invested nearly all of your remaining capital into these items. Bolts of lustrous silk, tightly wrapped and protected in oiled cloth, and several smaller, heavy chests filled with bronze mirrors and lacquerware. The total weight is staggering, close to 300 kilograms or over 600 pounds. It seems impossible that one animal could carry such a burden. First, Qasim shows you the harness. It's a complex assembly of leather straps, felt pads, and wooden frames. The centerpiece is the saddle, but it's not for riding. It's a specialized wooden pack saddle designed to fit snugly between the two humps. This design is a testament to ancient ingenuity. The frame distributes the weight over the camel's strong back and shoulders, avoiding direct pressure on its spine. A poorly fitted saddle can cause sores and injuries that would cripple a camel and end your journey prematurely. Qasim instructs you to make the camel kneel. You give the command, a guttural sound you practiced last night, and gently tap its front legs. With a series of grunts and groans that sound like ancient plumbing coming to life, the camel awkwardly folds its legs beneath itself and settles onto the ground with a soft thud. It immediately resumes its meditative chewing, seemingly unbothered. Now the real work begins. You and Qasim lift the heavy wooden frame and place it over the camel's back. You have to adjust it meticulously, ensuring the thick felt pads sit comfortably against its hide. The camel lets you know if you're doing it wrong, shifting its weight and letting out an annoyed groan. It's a conversation without words. Once the saddle is secure, the loading starts. Qasim explains the golden rule: balance. The load must be perfectly balanced on both sides. A difference of even a few kilograms can cause the entire pack to shift, chafe the animal, or even topple over in the middle of a narrow mountain pass. You start with the heaviest items, the chests of lacquerware. You and a helper hoist one up, straining with the effort, and hook it onto one side of the wooden frame. The camel grunts. Then you do the same with a chest of equal weight on the other side. Next come the bolts of silk, the most valuable part of your cargo. You handle them with reverence. These are lighter but bulkier. You lash them securely on top of the chests, one side, then the other, constantly checking the balance. Kasim moves around the camel, pulling on ropes, testing the tension, his experienced eyes spotting any slight imbalance you might have missed. He tells you a story of a novice merchant who, in a hurry, loaded his camel unevenly. A few days out, the load shifted, the camel panicked and bolted. It threw its entire cargo, a small fortune in glassware, down the side of a ravine. The merchant was ruined before he even reached the first major stop. This brings you to a peculiar and little-known piece of camel-packing lore that Kasim shares with a wry smile. He points to a small, unassuming bag filled with sand that he keeps nearby. He calls it a liar's bag. He explains that sometimes it's impossible to get the two sides perfectly balanced with just your cargo. Perhaps one bolt of silk is slightly heavier than another. That's when you use the liar's bag. You add or remove handfuls of sand from the bag, which is tied to the lighter side, until the balance is perfect. It's a simple, low-tech solution to a high-stakes problem. The name, he says, comes from the idea that you are lying to the camel about the weight, tricking it into a perfectly balanced load. As you work, you notice the ropes. They are woven from coarse animal hair, incredibly strong and durable. The knots Kasim teaches you are intricate, designed to be tightened with a simple pull but easy to release. This is crucial for quick unloading at the end of a long day. The whole process is a puzzle of weight, volume, and gravity. You have to secure the load so it doesn't bounce or shift, but not so tightly that it restricts the camel's movement or breathing. Historians and archaeologists who study the Silk Road still debate the subtle regional differences in packing techniques and saddle design. Excavations have revealed variations in the wooden frames used by Sogdian merchants compared to those from the Chinese heartland. Were these differences purely stylistic, or did they reflect adaptations to different types of cargo or terrain? Some argue that the Sogdian design was better for mountainous routes, while the Chinese design was more efficient for long desert treks. It's a detail lost to time, a silent testament to the countless innovations made by anonymous merchants like you. Finally, after nearly 2 hours of lifting, adjusting, and tying, the job is done. Your camel is loaded. It now looks even more colossal, a walking mountain of goods. Kasim gives one last tug on a rope and nods in satisfaction. "Good," he says. "He will carry this to Samarkand for you." You command the camel to stand. With another symphony of groans and creaks, it unfolds its long legs, rising first on its hind legs in a motion that tilts the entire load precariously forward, then pushing up with its front legs to finally stand tall. For a moment, you hold your breath, watching the load settle. It holds. The balance is perfect. The camel turns its head and looks at you, blinking its long lashes. It still has that look of profound indifference, but you fancy you see a glimmer of respect. Or perhaps it's just gas. Either way, you've passed a critical test. You are no longer a complete novice. You have learned the art of loading your partner for the long road ahead. The weight on its back is your future, and the balance you've achieved is your first taste of success on this epic journey. With your camel packed and ready, you are now officially part of the caravan. But a caravan isn't just a random assortment of merchants traveling in the same direction. It's a highly organized, mobile community with its own hierarchy, rules, and social dynamics. And at the very top of this hierarchy is a figure of immense importance, a man whose authority is absolute, the caravan leader, or caravan bashi. You meet him that afternoon as he summons all the first-time merchants for a briefing. His name is Al-Amin, a Sogdian with a formidable presence. He isn't the biggest man, but he carries himself with an unshakable confidence that comes from decades of traversing these lands. His face is a roadmap of his life, weathered by sun and wind, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seem to miss nothing. He wears practical but well-made clothes, and at his belt hangs not a jeweled dagger but a simple, functional blade. He speaks several languages, switching effortlessly between a heavily accented Chinese and his own Eastern Iranian tongue as he addresses the diverse group of merchants. He stands before you, his arms crossed, and lays down the law. His word, he explains, is final. On the road, there is no court, no magistrate. There is only him. He is the judge, jury, and, if necessary, the executioner. His primary responsibility is the safety and success of the entire caravan. This means he will set the pace, decide when to travel and when to rest, and negotiate passage with local tribes or officials. Disobeying his orders, he says, with a calm but chilling finality, will result in you being left behind. In the vast emptiness of the desert, that is a death sentence. The structure of the caravan is simple and effective. Al-Amin has a few trusted lieutenants, veteran travelers who act as his scouts and enforcers. There are armed guards, mercenaries hired to protect the caravan from bandits, a very real and constant threat. Then there are the merchants themselves, like you, ranked informally by their experience. As a newcomer, you are at the bottom of the pecking order. You'll be assigned a position in the middle of the long, snaking line of camels, the safest spot. The front is for the scouts, the rear for the guards. Al-Amin explains the daily routine. You will travel from before dawn until late morning, resting during the peak heat of the day. The journey will resume in the late afternoon and continue until after dusk. The signal to start and stop will be a single resonant blast from a horn. When you hear it, you are expected to be ready. No excuses. Water will be rationed strictly. He and only he will decide the daily allotment. Wasting water is a cardinal sin. One of the most important rules, and a fascinating insight into the social contract of the Silk Road, concerns what happens if a camel dies. Al-Amin explains that if your camel perishes due to your own negligence, poor packing, inadequate care, it is your loss alone. You must either try to buy another camel from a fellow merchant, at an exorbitant price no doubt, or abandon your goods. However, if your camel dies due to a shared calamity, like a sandstorm or a raid where the entire caravan suffers, the loss is socialized. The other merchants are obligated to help carry your cargo, distributing the extra weight among their own animals. It's a form of primitive insurance, a recognition that they are all in this together. Now for a slightly more bizarre but critically important piece of information. Al-Amin discusses the protocol for going to the bathroom. You don't just wander off into the desert whenever nature calls. It's incredibly easy to become disoriented and lose sight of the caravan. More than one traveler has met their end by simply straying too far for a moment of privacy. The rule is to always stay within sight of the last camel in the line. Furthermore, you must relieve yourself on the leeward side of the caravan's path, the side the wind is blowing away from. This isn't just a matter of politeness, it's about scent. Bandits and raiders were known to track caravans by the smell left behind by hundreds of men and animals. A concentrated scent trail was a clear sign of a large, wealthy party. By dispersing the evidence downwind, you made the caravan harder to track. It's a small, slightly embarrassing detail, but it was a matter of life and death. The question of who these caravan leaders were and how they were chosen is a subject that still intrigues historians. Were they elected? Did they inherit the role? Or did they simply rise to the top through sheer force of will and reputation? The consensus is that it was a combination of factors. A caravanabashi like Al-Amin likely started as a regular merchant. Through successful journeys, he would have built a reputation for good judgment, courage, and, most importantly, for bringing his caravans safely to their destination. Merchants would then actively seek to join his convoys, paying a fee for his leadership and protection. His authority wasn't granted by any state. It was earned in the unforgiving currency of the road, trust and results. Some scholars argue that certain families or clans came to dominate the role, creating dynasties of caravan leaders. But concrete evidence for this remains elusive. As Al-Amin finishes his speech, you look around at the other merchants. They are a motley crew: Sogdians, Persians, a few Uyghurs, and other Han Chinese like yourself. You are competitors, yes, but for the next few months, you are also a single, fragile entity. Your survival depends not just on your camel or your wits, but on the strength of this temporary community and the wisdom of the man standing before you. He dismisses you with a nod. The meeting is over. You return to your camel, a newfound sobriety settling over you. The romance of the journey is now tempered by a stark dose of reality. You check your ropes one last time, making sure every knot is secure. Tomorrow, before the first light of dawn, you will hear the horn. And you will be ready. You are no longer just an individual. You are a cog in the great, slow-moving machine that is the caravan, a machine under the command of the Caravanabashi. The sound of the horn slices through the pre-dawn stillness, a long, low note that seems to vibrate in your very bones. It's still dark, the stars brilliant in a sky not yet diluted by the sun. All around you, the caravanserai is a hive of quiet, purposeful activity. There are no loud shouts, only the rustle of cloth, the creak of leather, and the soft groans of camels being coaxed to their feet. This is the moment. The journey truly begins now. You move quickly, your breath pluming in the cool air. You give your camel a final check, offering it a small handful of dried beans, a little energy for the road ahead. It munches them with its usual slow, grinding motion. You untie its rope from the post, your heart a nervous drum against your ribs. Following the lead of the more experienced merchants, you guide your camel into the vast, open space outside the city gates, where the caravan is assembling. It's a magnificent and intimidating sight. Hundreds of camels, all loaded with their bulky cargo, are being maneuvered into a long, single file. The line stretches for what seems like a mile. The air is filled with a jingle of bells, small bronze bells that many merchants, including you, have tied to their camel's harness. These aren't just for decoration. The constant, gentle chiming is a way to keep track of the animal in the dark or in a sandstorm, and the collective sound helps to keep the caravan together. It's the signature soundtrack of the Silk Road. You find your assigned spot in the middle of the line, sandwiched between a Persian family's 2 camels laden with colorful textiles and a stoic Uyghur trader whose camel carries the unmistakable scent of medicinal herbs. The Persian merchant, a man with a friendly smile, gives you a nod of acknowledgement. You are now neighbors in this slow-moving city. The great gates of Chang'an, which have been sealed shut all night, groan open. The caravan begins to move. The motion is not sudden, but gradual, an immense inertia being overcome. It starts at the front with Al-Amin and his scouts and ripples back through the line, a wave of forward momentum. Your camel takes a step, then another, its gait a slow, swaying rhythm that you'll come to know intimately over the coming months. You walk beside it, holding the lead rope. You pass through the city gates and out into the world. The transition is immediate and profound. Behind you lies the largest, most vibrant city on Earth, a bastion of civilization, comfort, and safety. Ahead of you lies everything else. The landscape is still shrouded in the gray twilight of dawn, but you can feel the emptiness, the vastness of it. The road is just a dusty track winding its way west. This departure from a major city like Chang'an was a significant event, a well-documented part of Silk Road life. It was a moment of mixed emotions for the merchants. There was the thrill of adventure and the hope of profit, but also the deep anxiety of leaving family and the known world behind. Many would perform religious rituals or make offerings, praying for a safe journey and a profitable return. You might have visited a temple yesterday, leaving a small offering of incense and coin, your own silent prayer sent up into the ether. As the sun begins to rise, it casts long shadows across the landscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The Hexi corridor stretches out before you, a long, narrow passage of relatively fertile land, squeezed between forbidding mountains to the south and the harsh Gobi Desert to the north. This is the first leg of your journey, the well-trodden artery connecting the heart of China to the wilder lands of the West. For centuries, this corridor has been the path of armies, monks, and merchants. You fall into the rhythm of the march. The only sounds are the plodding of countless padded feet on the earth, the creak of leather and wood, and the ceaseless, hypnotic jingle of the camel bells. No one talks much. Energy is a resource to be conserved, just like water. You watch the landscape slowly change. The last vestiges of cultivated fields give way to scrubbier, more arid terrain. The air begins to warm. Here's a small, curious detail about the journey that often gets overlooked: the smell. After just a few hours on the road, a unique aroma develops around the caravan. It's a combination of camel dander, which has a surprisingly sweet, musky scent, dusty earth, worn leather, and the faint, collective body odor of several hundred unwashed men. It's not necessarily unpleasant, just distinctive. It's the perfume of the Silk Road, a scent that would cling to your clothes and hair for months. You look at your camel. It seems utterly at home here. Its slow, swaying walk is incredibly efficient, a deliberate placement of each foot designed to conserve maximum energy. It's a pace you can easily keep up with. Its head is up, occasionally swiveling to survey the horizon, its nostrils twitching, tasting the air. The question of when this grand enterprise, the Silk Road, truly began is a classic historical debate. There isn't a specific date or a grand opening ceremony. The Roman Empire's insatiable demand for Chinese silk, which began to trickle through in the 1st century BCE, is often cited as the primary driver. But the famous journey of the Chinese diplomat Zhang Chen in the 2nd century BCE is traditionally considered the catalyst. He was sent west by the Han Emperor to form an alliance against the nomadic Xiongnu tribes, and came back with knowledge of powerful horses and wealthy civilizations in Central Asia. Historians are still arguing whether he opened the Silk Road or simply formalized and documented routes that had already been in use by local peoples for centuries. The truth is likely somewhere in between. The Silk Road wasn't built, it grew. It was an organic network that evolved over time, driven by the basic human desires for wealth, security, and knowledge. The sun is higher now, its heat starting to bite. You pull your wide-brimmed hat down to shade your face and take a small, measured sip from your water skin. The water is already warm and tastes of leather, but it's the most precious thing you own. You look back one last time. The great walls of Chang'an are just a thin line on the horizon, a memory of the world you've left behind. Ahead, the road disappears into a shimmering heat haze. The caravan plods on, a single, determined entity moving through an immense landscape. The tuoling, the camel bells, chime their steady, reassuring rhythm. You have left the harbor. You are now at sea on this great, dusty ocean. Days bleed into weeks. The relatively gentle terrain of the Hexi corridor is now a memory. You've passed the Jade Gate, the proverbial last gate of China, and are now entering the formidable expanse of the Taklamakan Desert. The name itself is a warning. It's popularly translated from the Uyghur language as "you go in, you don't come out." The locals, with a grim sense of humor, simply call it the Sea of Death. The world has been reduced to a palette of yellows and browns. Immense sand dunes, sculpted by the wind into razor-sharp ridges and soft, flowing curves, stretch to every horizon. They are deceptively beautiful, like a frozen, golden ocean. The sun is no longer just a source of light and warmth. It is a malevolent presence, a relentless hammer beating down from a bleached white sky. The heat is a physical thing, shimmering off the sand in waves that distort the air, creating mirages of shimmering lakes that your thirsty mind knows are false. Your daily routine is now dictated by survival. Al-Amin's horn wakes you in the deepest part of the night, long before sunrise. You travel through the cool darkness and the early morning, guided by the stars and the silhouette of the dunes against the ink-black sky. By mid-morning, as the heat becomes unbearable, the horn sounds again. This is the signal to make camp. Camping here is a minimalist affair. There are no tents to pitch. You simply find what little shade you can on the leeward side of a dune. The first and most important job is to care for your camel. You unload its heavy cargo, allowing its back to breathe and rest. You check its feet for cuts and its hide for any signs of chafing from the saddle. You offer it a portion of its feed, dry, tough straw and beans you carry, but it often ignores it, preferring to seek out the sparse, spiny shrubs that somehow survive in this wasteland. You watch your camel, a new level of respect dawning on you. It is in its element. While you are sweating, panting, and constantly battling thirst, your camel appears serene. It stands with a quiet stillness, conserving energy. It can tolerate a body temperature fluctuation that would kill a human, allowing its internal temperature to rise during the day to reduce water loss from sweating, and then cooling down during the chilly desert night. This is a core piece of camel physiology that every desert traveler relied on, even if they didn't understand the science behind it. Lunch for you is a piece of hard, dry flatbread and a few dates. Water is strictly rationed by one of Al-Amin's lieutenants, who ladles out a meager portion into your cup. It's warm and tastes metallic, but it is life. You spend the hottest part of the day in a state of semi-stupor, huddled under a piece of cloth you've rigged up for shade, trying to sleep. But sleep is difficult in the oppressive heat and the blinding light. Sometimes, in the shimmering distance, you see things. A dark shape that looks like a rider on a horse, or the vague outline of a building. Your heart leaps for a second, but the veteran merchants beside you don't even look up. They are mirages, tricks of the heat and light. A particularly cruel one is the Fata Morgana, where layers of air at different temperatures create complex, shifting images that can look like entire cities or armies on the horizon. One of the strangest and least understood phenomena, a bit of desert folklore that gets whispered about, is the sound of the singing sands. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, the movement of sand down the face of a dune creates a deep, booming or humming sound that can last for several minutes. Early travelers were terrified by it, attributing it to demons or spirits of those lost in the desert. Scientists today explain it as a result of friction between sand grains of a specific size and composition, but hearing it for the first time, alone in that vast emptiness, is an eerie, unsettling experience.
As the sun begins its descent, the world changes. The heat lessens and the colors return. The dunes are bathed in a soft, golden light, their shadows stretching long and purple. The horn sounds, and the process of loading begins again. You travel into the evening, and often for several hours after dark, navigating by the brilliant canopy of stars. One evening, a young merchant's camel collapses. It simply lies down and refuses to get up. Its humps are deflated, hanging limply to the side. Its breathing is shallow. Al-Amin comes over to inspect it. He looks at its eyes, feels its hide, and shakes his head. The animal is too dehydrated and exhausted. There is nothing to be done. The young merchant, his face a mask of despair, pleads. This camel is his entire livelihood. Al-Amin is firm, but not unkind. The caravan cannot wait. To stop is to endanger everyone. The merchant is forced to abandon his animal and most of his goods, distributing a few valuable items among others according to the caravan's code. You watch as the caravan moves on, leaving the man and his dying camel behind. It's a brutal lesson in the economics of survival on the Silk Road. He will have to walk until the next oasis, hoping to buy a new animal. The debate among historians and climatologists is whether the Taklamakan was always this harsh. Some geological and textual evidence suggests that a couple of thousand years ago, the climate may have been slightly milder, with more rivers flowing from the surrounding mountains and larger oases. Ancient cities, now buried under hundreds of feet of sand, have been discovered along what were once riverbeds. The story of the Taklamakan is a story of climate change, of a region growing progressively drier and more hostile over the centuries. The journey you are taking is significantly harder than it might have been for your predecessors 500 years earlier. You plod onward, the sand seemingly endless. Your world has shrunk to the back of the camel in front of you, the feel of the rope in your hand, and the constant swaying motion of your own animal. In this crucible of heat and sand, your relationship with your camel has deepened. It's no longer just livestock. It is your partner in this ordeal. You talk to it in low, soothing tones. You rely on its incredible resilience. It is your living, breathing lifeline, the true, unsung hero of this journey, carrying your hopes and dreams on its back through the sea of death.
Just when you think you can't take another day of the relentless, featureless sand, a change occurs. It starts subtly. One of Al-Amin's scouts, who has been riding far ahead, gallops back to the caravan, his face alight with news. He points to the horizon. At first, you see nothing but the usual heat shimmer. But as you plod onward for another hour, a thin, dark green line distinguishes itself from the endless yellow. The line grows, solidifies. It's not a mirage, it's trees. The mood in the caravan lifts instantly. A murmur of relief ripples down the long line of merchants. The pace quickens, a new energy infused into both man and beast. Even your camel seems to sense it. Its head held a little higher, its steps a little more purposeful. It can smell the water, the life, from miles away. After what feels like an eternity, you arrive. The transition is breathtakingly abrupt. One moment you are in the sterile, silent world of the desert. The next, you are enveloped by the vibrant, noisy life of an oasis. You've reached Dunhuang, a major hub on the edge of the Taklamakan. It's not just a puddle with a few palm trees. It's a small, bustling city. A verdant island in the Golden Sea, sustained by a river flowing down from the distant mountains. The sight of so much green is almost overwhelming to your sun-scorched eyes. Poplar trees line the irrigation channels, their leaves rustling in the breeze, a sound you haven't heard in weeks. You see fields of wheat and small orchards of apricot and pomegranate trees. The air, which for so long has been hot, dry, and dusty, is now cool, humid, and fragrant with the smell of damp earth and blossoming flowers. Your caravan doesn't go into the city proper, but to a massive, sprawling caravanserai on its outskirts, even larger than the one in Chang'an. This is a critical stop for rest, repairs, and trade. The first order of business is the camels. You lead yours to the long stone troughs, and for the first time since entering the desert, you let it drink its fill. The animal plunges its head into the water and drinks with a deep, gurgling sound, seemingly without pause. It's an awesome sight, the physical manifestation of its unique biology, rehydrating its entire system in a matter of minutes. After it has drunk, you give it a generous portion of fresh, green fodder, a welcome treat after weeks of dry straw. The oasis is more than just a place for physical replenishment. It's a melting pot of cultures and a hotbed of intrigue. Here, the northern and southern routes of the Silk Road around the Taklamakan converge. You see people you haven't encountered before, monks with shaved heads and saffron robes on their way to or from India, fierce-looking nomadic tribesmen from the northern steppes trading horses for grain, and merchants from every corner of the known world. The social order of the oasis is a delicate thing. Water is the currency of life, and control of it is the source of power. The oasis is governed by a local ruler who taxes the caravans heavily for the privilege of using the water and pasture land. Al-Amin spends his first day in long negotiations with the governor's officials, haggling over the fees. Fights can and do break out at the wells. A strict hierarchy dictates who can draw water and when. As part of a large, well-defended caravan led by a respected caravan bashi, you are in a privileged position. Smaller groups or individual travelers are often at the mercy of local gangs or corrupt officials. Here you encounter a strange and unique product of the oasis economy, the sale of guides. These are local men who claim to know secret, faster routes across the next stretch of desert. Some are legitimate, but many are charlatans. A popular, though possibly apocryphal tale whispered among merchants is of a guide who led a small, wealthy caravan into a remote part of the desert where his bandit accomplices were waiting. The entire caravan was robbed and left to perish. Choosing a reliable guide, if you dared to leave the main route, was a life-or-death gamble. While your camel rests and recuperates, you take the opportunity to resupply, but also to visit the nearby Mogao Caves, or the Caves of the Thousand Buddhas. Carved into a cliff face just outside the city, this is a stunning complex of hundreds of man-made grottos, each filled with vibrant murals and sculpted figures. This is a classic example of the Silk Road's cultural exchange in action. The artistic styles are a blend of Chinese, Indian, and Greco-Roman influences. You see Buddhas with features that look distinctly Gandharan, a region in modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan, a style that was itself influenced by the statues left behind by Alexander the Great's armies. Historians and archaeologists are still trying to unravel the full story of places like Dunhuang. One of the most significant debates revolves around the famous Library Cave, which was sealed up in the 11th century and only rediscovered in 1900. It contained tens of thousands of priceless manuscripts, not just Buddhist scriptures, but also administrative documents, literary works, and even a Christian text written in Chinese. Why was it sealed? The leading theory is that it was a desperate act to protect the documents from an impending invasion by a rival kingdom. But other scholars suggest it might have been a sacred repository for damaged or obsolete texts, a kind of religious graveyard for documents. The true reason remains a captivating historical mystery. You spend a few days in the relative paradise of the oasis. You eat fresh food, wash the layers of dust from your skin and clothes, and sleep soundly without the fear of the open desert. You trade some of your bronze mirrors for fresh supplies and a stronger set of ropes. It's a vital period of recovery, but you know it's temporary. Soon the horn will sound again. You must plunge back into the sea of sand. The oasis is not the destination. It is merely a port of call, a fragile bubble of life that makes the rest of the impossible journey possible. It's a stark reminder that on the Silk Road, life and civilization exist only in these small, precious pockets, surrounded by a vast and unforgiving wilderness. You leave the green haven of Dunhuang behind, your water skins full and your camel's humps firm and upright again. The caravan plunges back into the desert, but this time the atmosphere is different. There's a nervous tension in the air. The veterans keep scanning the horizon, their hands closer to the hilts of their swords. Al-Amin has sent scouts further out than usual. The reason for their anxiety is the terrain you are now entering. It's a region of rocky canyons and shifting dunes, a landscape infamous for two things: bandits and sandstorms. You get to experience the latter first. It begins not with a roar, but with a strange, unnerving silence. The usual gentle breeze dies down completely. The air becomes thick, heavy, and eerily still. The sky to the west, which was a clear blue just an hour ago, is now tinged with a sickly yellow-brown hue. Al-Amin gives a sharp cry, a command that echoes down the line. "Kneel the camels, now!" There's no panic, just a frantic, disciplined haste. You've been drilled for this. You force your camel to its knees, making it face away from the approaching wall of dust. The other merchants are doing the same, forming a tight, defensive circle with the animals. The camels seem to know what's coming. They groan, close their muscular nostrils to slits, and lower their heads. You pull a heavy cloth over your own head and mouth, crouching down on the leeward side of your camel, pressing yourself against its warm, coarse flank. Your camel is now your shield, your living wall against the storm. The wall of sand, which was a distant smudge on the horizon, is now upon you.
The world disappears. It's not like a storm of rain or snow. It's a total sensory obliteration. First comes the wind, a physical blow that threatens to tear the cloth from your hands. Then comes the sand. It's not just dust, it's a torrent of fine, stinging particles that get everywhere instantly. The light vanishes, replaced by a suffocating, churning brown darkness. You can't see the person next to you. You can't see your own hands. The only thing you can feel is the solid, reassuring presence of your camel beside you. The sound is terrifying. It's a high-pitched, screaming roar, a constant, deafening shriek that drowns out all other noise. It feels like the world is being scoured clean, stripped down to its bare bones. You huddle closer to your camel, burying your face in its shaggy fur, which smells of dust and musk. The animal is incredibly calm. It occasionally shifts its weight against the force of the wind, but otherwise it remains a stoic, unmoving anchor in the chaos. This is what it was built for. Its double-layered eyelashes are sealed shut. Its nostrils are closed. Its furred ears protecting its inner workings. It is, in this moment, infinitely better adapted to this environment than you are. This experience, a full-blown desert sandstorm, is one of the most well-documented dangers of the Silk Road. Ancient Chinese texts refer to them as black winds. Travelers wrote of being buried alive, of caravans being wiped out completely, the sand burying them so thoroughly that no trace was ever found. Here's a peculiar, less-known survival tactic that some experienced merchants employed during such storms. They would listen intently to the bells on their camels. Each family or merchant often had bells with a slightly different tone. In the disorienting darkness of a storm, if a person got separated from their own animal, they could sometimes find their way back by listening for the specific pitch of their bell amidst the roaring wind. It was an auditory lifeline in a world where sight was useless.
The storm rages for what feels like an eternity. It could be an hour, it could be 3. Time loses all meaning. Your world is reduced to the roar of the wind, the sting of sand on any exposed skin, and the solid warmth of your camel. And then, as abruptly as it began, it passes. The screaming of the wind subsides to a low moan, and then to a whisper. Light begins to filter back into the world, a diffuse, eerie twilight. You slowly lift your head, spitting a mouthful of grit. The world has been remade. The landscape is transformed. Dunes have shifted, their shapes altered.
A fine layer of sand covers everything, including you and your camel. You rise, your limbs stiff, and shake the sand from your clothes and hair. All around you, other figures are doing the same, emerging like ghosts from a sandy grave. The air is still thick with dust, but the storm itself is over, a dark brown cloud moving away to the east. Al-Amin is already on his feet, shouting orders, checking on his men and animals. You check your camel. It shakes its massive body, sending a shower of sand into the air. It opens its eyes, blinks its incredible lashes a few times to clear them, and lets out a long, suffering groan, as if mildly inconvenienced by the whole affair. It seems completely unharmed. The question of how ancient peoples predicted these storms is a matter of some speculation among scholars. While they lacked modern meteorological tools, experienced travelers like Al-Amin were expert observers of nature. They could read the subtle signs, the stillness of the air, the color of the sky, the behavior of insects or birds just before a storm hit. Some historians argue they may have had a rudimentary understanding of atmospheric pressure changes, noticing how certain sounds traveled differently or how their own bodies felt just before a storm. These were skills born of generations of experience, a knowledge system that has been largely lost. You spend the next hour cleaning your gear, ensuring no sand has worked its way into your precious cargo of silk. The caravan slowly reassembles, a collective sigh of relief palpable among the survivors. You have faced the fury of the desert, and, thanks to the calm resilience of your camel, you have endured. You look at the big, shaggy beast with a new depth of gratitude. It wasn't just your transport or your shield. In that roaring brown darkness, it was your anchor to the world.
After the violence of the sandstorm, the desert grants you a few days of reprieve. The skies are clear, the air is clean, and the nights are breathtakingly beautiful. With no cities for hundreds of miles, the sky becomes a dome of black velvet scattered with diamond dust. The Milky Way is a luminous river stretching from horizon to horizon. This is when the second part of the caravan's daily rhythm begins, the night. After the evening march is done and the camels are unloaded and fed, the camp is set up. This is not a camp of tents and fortifications, but simply a circle of sleeping bodies and resting animals. In the center of this circle, a single precious fire is lit. The fuel is scarce, dried scrub brush and the carefully collected droppings of the camels, which, when dry, burn cleanly and with very little smoke. This fire is the heart of the caravan after dark. You gather around it, a weary circle of men seeking warmth against the surprising chill of the desert night and companionship against the overwhelming loneliness of the landscape. This is where the true social life of the caravan unfolds. The strict hierarchy of the day softens. Al-Amin sits with his lieutenants, but other experienced merchants join them, and even a novice like you is welcome to listen. The conversations are a polyglot murmur, a mix of Sogdian, Persian, Uyghur, and Chinese. You pick up phrases here and there, your ear slowly attuning to the linguistic melody of the Silk Road. But much of the communication transcends language. A shared piece of flatbread, a nod of understanding, a laugh at a simple joke. These are the universal currency.
This is where the stories are told. An old Persian merchant, his face illuminated by the flickering flames, recounts the tale of Rostam, the legendary hero of Persian mythology, battling dragons and demons. His voice is deep and sonorous, and even though you only understand half the words, you are captivated by the drama and passion of his telling. His tale is a piece of his culture, a thread of oral tradition carried across the desert. Then a Sogdian trader, a man known for his sharp business sense, shifts the topic to something more practical: gossip.
He shares news he heard in the last oasis about a shift in the price of lapis lazuli in Bactria, or a rumor that the Byzantine emperor is seeking a new supplier of white jade. This isn't idle chatter, it's vital market intelligence, shared cautiously among trusted peers. You listen intently, trying to absorb any tidbit that might help you when you finally reach the markets of the West. These nightly gatherings were the primary means of information transfer on the Silk Road. There were no newspapers, no telegraphs. News traveled at the speed of a camel, carried in the minds and mouths of merchants. The information was often distorted, exaggerated, or months out of date, but it was all they had. Then the conversation might turn to more fantastical subjects. A younger merchant swears that a few nights ago during his watch, he saw a ghoul, a desert demon from Arabian and Persian folklore, loping along a distant ridge. The older men chuckle, but they don't dismiss him entirely. The desert is a place that breeds belief in the supernatural. The line between mirage and vision, between wind and whisper, is thin. One of the most curious and debated topics that might come up is the legend of the Kingdom of Prester John. This was a persistent myth that circulated in Europe and the Near East for centuries. It told of a powerful and wealthy Christian king whose kingdom was located somewhere in the mysterious lands of the East. Travelers and missionaries were constantly searching for him. Historians are still trying to trace the origin of this powerful legend. Was it a garbled account of the Christian communities that did exist in Central Asia and India? Was it wishful thinking, a hope for a powerful ally in the East? Or was it, as some scholars suggest, a complete fabrication that took on a life of its own? Hearing merchants around a campfire discuss rumors of this mythical king would have been a fascinating glimpse into the medieval imagination.
And of course, there are stories about the camels themselves. A strange but persistent belief, a piece of campfire pseudoscience, was that you could discern a camel's mood and health by the way it chewed its cud. A slow, rhythmic chew meant it was content. A fast, agitated chew was a sign of stress or illness. There was no real scientific basis for this, of course, but it was part of the vast body of camel lore that handlers swore by. It was their way of trying to understand and connect with their silent, stoic partners. You don't say much, being a newcomer. You are in a state of absorption, a sponge soaking up the knowledge and atmosphere. You watch the faces in the firelight, the diverse tapestry of humanity brought together by a shared purpose. These men are your rivals, but out here, under the immense star-filled sky, they are also your brothers. They are the only other humans you will see for weeks on end. As the fire dies down to glowing embers, the men begin to drift away, wrapping themselves in their blankets to sleep. A few guards take up positions on the perimeter, their silhouettes dark against the star-dusted horizon. You lie back, pulling your own blanket tight. The ground is hard, but you are exhausted. The stories of the night echo in your mind. Tales of heroes, prophets, demons, and mythical kings. You look up at the brilliant, unblinking stars. They are the same stars that guided Zhang Qian and Marco Polo. The same stars that are shining down on your family back in Chang'an. You feel incredibly small, a tiny speck in the vastness of the desert. But you also feel connected, part of a long, unbroken chain of travelers who have huddled around fires just like this one, sharing stories to keep the darkness at bay. The silence of the desert settles around you, punctuated only by the soft breathing and occasional groans of the sleeping camels. And you fall asleep, lulled by the quiet heartbeat of the caravan. Days turn into a rhythmic pattern of walking, resting, and watching the unchanging horizon. The initial shock of the desert has faded into a dull, persistent reality. It's during this long, monotonous stretch that you truly begin to appreciate the cargo your camel is carrying. It's not just a collection of goods, it's a concentration of immense value,
the physical embodiment of why you are risking everything on this journey. And the most valuable of all is the silk. One afternoon, during the midday rest, you decide to inspect your precious cargo. You carefully unlash one of the bundles, which is wrapped in thick, oiled cloth to protect it from moisture and dust. Peeling back the layers, you reveal the treasure within. The silk spills out, and even in the harsh glare of the desert sun, its quality is breathtaking. It's a bolt of brilliant crimson, so finely woven that it seems to capture the light and hold it, glowing with an inner luminescence. You run your rough, calloused fingers over its surface. It feels impossibly smooth, cool to the touch despite the searing heat. It's as light as a cloud, yet incredibly strong. You let a length of it ripple in the hot breeze, and it flows like liquid fire. This is why the Romans called it woven wind. They were utterly mystified by it, and for a long time they believed it grew on trees. The Chinese guarded the secret of its production, sericulture, the cultivation of silkworms, for millennia. It was their greatest trade secret, a national treasure. The production of this single bolt of fabric was an incredibly laborious process. It began with the hatching of tiny silkworms, which feasted voraciously on mountains of mulberry leaves. Once they spun their cocoons, each from a single continuous thread of raw silk that could be nearly a kilometer long, they were steamed to kill the pupa inside. Then, workers, usually women, would painstakingly unwind these delicate filaments from the cocoons, combining several threads to create a single strand strong enough for weaving. This raw silk was then dyed with expensive natural pigments: crimson from madder root, brilliant yellow from gardenia seeds, deep indigo from the indigo plant, before being woven on complex looms into the shimmering fabric you now hold. You are not just a merchant. You are the final link in this long and delicate chain. The lives of countless farmers, worm cultivators, spinners, and weavers are all concentrated in this bundle on your camel's back. By the time this silk reaches its final destination, perhaps a wealthy senator in Rome or a noble lady in Persia, its value will have increased exponentially. You paid a handsome sum for it in Chang'an, but in Samarkand or Antioch, it will be worth a fortune, literally worth its weight in gold. This brings up a quirky and often misunderstood aspect of the silk trade, the concept of second-hand silk. Because silk was so absurdly expensive in the West, it was rarely discarded. A fine silk garment might be worn by a Roman noble, and upon their death, it would be bequeathed in their will. Or, if it became worn or went out of fashion, it wouldn't be thrown away. Instead, it would be painstakingly unraveled, the precious threads collected, and then rewoven into a new fabric, often mixed with linen or wool to make it go further. So, the silk tunic worn by a Roman senator might contain threads that had once been part of a Han Dynasty courtier's robe, a silent, thread-based reincarnation. As you are carefully rewrapping the silk, Al-Amin walks over. He inspects your work and nods approvingly. He tells you that while silk is the most famous cargo, the true genius of a merchant is in diversification. He gestures to your other chests. The bronze mirrors, finely polished on one side and intricately decorated with mythological beasts on the other, are highly prized in Central Asia, where the local metalworking skills couldn't produce such perfect reflective surfaces. The lacquerware, with its deep, glossy finish and resistance to moisture, is a novelty that will fetch a good price. The historical debate among economists and historians is what exactly was the main product on the Silk Road. We call it the Silk Road, but was silk truly the dominant commodity by volume or value throughout its long history? Some scholars argue that while silk was the most glamorous product, the day-to-day trade might have been dominated by more mundane but essential goods, ceramics, tea, spices, and metals. They suggest that the name Silk Road, which was only coined in the 19th century by a German geographer, gives a distorted picture. Others maintain that the high value of silk, even in small quantities, meant it was always the economic engine of the entire network. The truth is, the flow of goods was constantly changing, responding to shifting tastes, new technologies, and the rise and fall of empires. Al-Amin shares a final piece of wisdom. "The cargo you can see is only half the story," he says, his eyes twinkling. "The most valuable things we carry cannot be packed in a chest." He's referring to the invisible cargo, the ideas, technologies, religions, and artistic styles that were hitching a ride on the back of your camel along with the silk. The secret of papermaking, for instance, traveled west along this route. The teachings of Buddhism traveled east. Musical instruments, medical knowledge, and even games like chess spread along these same dusty tracks. You are not just a silk merchant, you are an unwitting agent of cultural transmission. You finish securing your cargo, your perspective slightly altered. The bundles on your camel's back are no longer just your ticket to wealth. They are a tangible piece of your civilization, a product of immense skill and artistry. And as you carry it west, you are part of a process far grander and more significant than you could have imagined back in the noisy market of Chang'an. You are a thread in the great tapestry of human connection woven across the vast and silent desert. The seemingly endless expanse of the Taklamakan Desert finally begins to yield, the flat sands giving way to foothills, and then, looming in the distance, a terrifying and awe-inspiring sight, the Pamir Mountains. This is the next great obstacle of your journey. The ancient Persians had a name for this place, Upa Meru, meaning higher than Meru, with Meru being the mythical central mountain of the world. The locals and the caravan veterans just call it the roof of the world. The ascent is gradual at first, but the change in environment is dramatic. The oppressive heat of the desert is replaced by a crisp, cool air that soon becomes a biting cold. You trade your wide-brimmed sun hat for a warm felted cap and wrap yourself in heavier wool. The landscape transforms from soft sand to hard, rocky ground. The trail narrows, winding its way through steep-sided gorges and along precarious ledges. The pace of the caravan slows to a crawl. The wide, snaking line of the desert is now compressed into a single-file column, carefully picking its way through the treacherous terrain. The soft plodding of camel feet is replaced by the clatter of hooves on stone, and the occasional shower of pebbles echoing into the valley below. This is where your Bactrian camel reveals another of its superpowers, its incredible sure-footedness and resilience to cold. While the one-humped dromedary is a master of the hot desert, it fares poorly in the cold and on rocky ground. Your two-humped companion, however, is a mountain expert. Its broad, tough feet, perfect for sand, also provide a stable grip on the uneven stone. Its thick, shaggy coat, which seemed so cumbersome in the desert, is now a vital insulator, protecting it from the freezing temperatures, especially at night. You see your camel carefully placing each foot, its head down, navigating a narrow ledge with a drop of hundreds of feet beside it, with a calmness that shames your own racing heart. But the mountain presents a new danger, one that is invisible and insidious, the altitude. As you climb higher, the air becomes thin, starved of oxygen. You find yourself constantly out of breath. A simple task like adjusting a rope on your camel's pack leaves you panting, your heart hammering in your chest. You develop a splitting headache that never quite goes away. This is altitude sickness, a condition the old-timers call mountain madness. They have their own remedies, a bitter tea made from a local root, and the advice to move slowly, breathe deeply, and never, ever run. Even the camels are not entirely immune. While better adapted than you are, they also feel the strain. They breathe more heavily, and their pace becomes even more deliberate. Al-Amin orders more frequent rests to allow everyone, man and beast, to acclimatize. One evening, a camel from another merchant string, an older animal, lies down and cannot be coaxed back to its feet. It's not exhaustion this time, its lungs have given out in the thin air. The caravan has to move on, another loss lamented and then left behind on the unforgiving slopes. The nights are brutally cold. You huddle for warmth not around a fire, fuel is almost non-existent at this altitude, but with the camels. The animals are arranged in a tight circle, and the men sleep in the protected space within, sharing the collective body heat of the massive beasts. Your camel's warm, breathing bulk is your furnace against the sub-zero temperatures. You press against it, grateful for its living heat, listening to the slow rhythm of its breathing. A curious piece of alpine lore you learn from the veterans is the danger of frozen breath. In the deepest cold of the night, your exhaled breath, full of moisture, could freeze instantly onto your beard or the cloth covering your face. There were tales of men waking up to find their mouths literally frozen shut by a mask of their own frozen breath. To combat this, you learn to sleep with your head and face completely wrapped in a dry woolen cloth, creating a pocket of warmer air to breathe.
The journey through the Pamirs was the most technically difficult and dangerous leg of the entire Silk Road. Historians and geographers still marvel at the fact that caravans could cross it at all. The debate continues over the exact routes taken. Were there high roads used in summer and low roads for other seasons? How did they navigate before modern maps? The answer lies in a deep, intimate knowledge of the landscape passed down through generations. A particular rock formation, the shape of a valley, the direction of a frozen stream, these were the signposts. This knowledge was the most valuable commodity a guide could possess. Some scholars suggest that the routes were marked by cairns, piles of stones built up over centuries by passing travelers, each person adding a single stone as a prayer or a signpost for those who would follow. After weeks of this grueling ascent, you reach the highest point of your crossing, a high-altitude pass, a narrow saddle of rock and ice between towering snow-capped peaks. The view is terrifying and sublime. You are surrounded by a jagged world of rock and ice under a sky so dark a blue it's almost black. You feel as if you are truly on the roof of the world, a tiny, insignificant creature in a realm of giants. There is a tradition here. Reaching the pass is a major milestone, a moment for a brief rest and a prayer of thanks. You and the other merchants dismount, bow your heads in the direction of your respective homes, and murmur your gratitude for a safe passage so far. You leave a small offering, a thread from your tunic tied to a rock, a gesture of respect to the spirits of the mountain. From here, it is downhill. The journey is far from over, but the greatest physical barrier is now behind you. As you begin the slow, careful descent down the western slopes of the Pamirs, you look back at the icy peaks one last time. You have crossed them. You have survived. And you did it on the back of the shaggy, stoic, and utterly incredible animal walking calmly in front of you, its breath plumbing in the frigid air. You have walked on the roof of the world together. The descent from the icy peaks of the Pamirs is as treacherous as the climb, but it brings you into a new world. The landscape softens, the air thickens, and green returns to the valleys. You have crossed the Great Mountain Barrier and are now officially in Central Asia, the vibrant, multicultural crossroads of the Silk Road. The faces, languages, and customs are all new. You make your way to a bustling trading outpost in the Fergano Valley, a place renowned for its fertility and, most famously, its magnificent horses. The caravanserai here is a chaotic swirl of new peoples. You see men with fair hair and light-colored eyes, their features a distant echo of the Greco-Bactrian kingdoms, founded by Alexander the Great's successors centuries ago.
You see nomadic chieftains from the steppes to the north, their faces weathered and their clothing made of leather and felt. And everywhere you see the people who dominate the trade in this region, the Sogdians. Sogdiana was an ancient civilization located in modern-day Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, and its people were the undisputed masters of Silk Road commerce for centuries. They were the ultimate middlemen, the glue that held the entire network together. You find yourself standing next to a group of them as they haggle over a string of the famed Fergana horses. Your first interaction is a classic case of chicken and duck talk, ji tong ya jiang, the Chinese expression for a conversation where two people are talking past each other, unable to understand a word the other is saying. You need to purchase fresh supplies, grain for your camel, and food for yourself. You approach a stall run by a Sogdian merchant, a man with a shrewd but not unfriendly face, and try to make your needs known.
You point to a sack of barley. "Do xiao qian," you ask in Chinese, "how much?" He looks at you with a blank but polite smile and responds in his own Sogdian language, a flowing, melodic string of sounds that is completely unintelligible to you. "Chena huash," he might be saying, which could mean, "What do you want?" You try again, holding up 3 fingers, hoping to buy 3 measures. He misinterprets your gesture, thinking you are offering him 3 of your bronze coins, a ridiculously low price. He shakes his head, laughing, and says something to his friend, who also laughs. You feel a flush of frustration and embarrassment. You are literate and well-spoken in your own world, but here you are reduced to the communication level of a toddler, reliant on pointing and grunting. This is the reality of the Silk Road. It wasn't a world of universal translators. While some elite diplomats or high-level merchants might have employed interpreters, the vast majority of traders like you had to rely on a pidgin mix of languages, gestures, and, most importantly, a shared understanding of numbers and trade. Eventually, a surprising solution presents itself. The Sogdian merchant, seeing your struggle, pulls out a small, flat piece of slate and a bit of chalk. He writes down a number, not in his script or yours, but in a numerical system that both of you, through exposure to trade, can recognize. Then the haggling begins. You erase his number and write a lower one. He scoffs theatrically, erases your number, and writes one slightly lower than his original offer. This silent, written negotiation continues until you agree on a price, a series of chalk marks on a slate bridging the vast linguistic divide between you. This leads to a fascinating and slightly quirky aspect of Sogdian culture that archaeologists have uncovered: their mail system. The Sogdians established merchant colonies all along the Silk Road, from their homeland all the way into China itself. To stay in touch, they relied on a surprisingly sophisticated letter-writing system. A caravan heading east would carry a pouch of letters to be delivered to Sogdian communities along the way. Archaeologists have discovered a cache of these ancient letters, written on paper, a technology they learned from the Chinese, in their own script. They contain business dealings, family news, and complaints about life far from home. One particularly poignant letter is from a woman abandoned by her husband in Dunhuang, writing to her mother back in Samarkand, lamenting her fate. These letters are a rare and intimate glimpse into the personal lives of the people who made the road their home.
The question of what language served as the lingua franca of the Silk Road is a subject of ongoing scholarly debate. For a long time, particularly in this central section, Sogdian was dominant. In the east, Chinese held sway, and in the west it was Persian or Aramaic and later Arabic. But there was likely no single universal language. Instead, most successful merchants were multilingual, or at least proficient in the pidgin vernacular of the trade routes, a functional, stripped-down mix of vocabulary from a dozen languages focused on commerce, words for price, silver, silk, camel, danger, and water. Some linguists have tried to reconstruct this hypothetical Silk Road pidgin, but with little concrete evidence, its true nature remains a mystery. As you spend more time in the Fergana outpost, you start to pick up a few essential words. You learn the Sogdian word for thank you, spas, and water, op. You learn to recognize the gestures that mean good quality versus bad quality. You are slowly, painstakingly building your own personal dictionary. You watch the Sogdian merchants with a mixture of envy and respect. They operate with an easy confidence in this multicultural milieu. They switch languages, calculate exchange rates between different currencies in their heads, and maintain vast networks of contacts and credit. They were born into this world. You are just a visitor. But you are learning. The frustrating encounter at the grain stall was a lesson. You realize that to succeed here, you need more than just good silk and a strong camel. You need to learn the art of communication in a world of 100 tongues. Your journey is no longer just a physical one across landscapes, but a mental one across cultures. After a few weeks of rest and trade in the Fergana Valley, the caravan prepares to move on. One morning, as you're grooming your camel, you notice something is wrong. The animal is listless. It refuses its morning fodder, a clear sign that something is amiss. When you try to lead it, it moves with a strange, limping gait, favoring one of its front legs. Your heart sinks. A lame camel is a disaster. You run your hands carefully down its leg, feeling for any sign of injury. It flinches when you touch its shoulder. Panic begins to set in. All your hopes, your entire investment, are tied to the health of this single creature. Al-Amin, whose experienced eye misses nothing, walks over. He watches the camel for a moment, then instructs you to walk it back and forth. He kneels, examining its foot, then its leg, his expression serious. "It's not a simple stone bruise," he says, his voice grim. "It's a joint fever." Just like humans, camels were susceptible to a whole range of illnesses and injuries. They could suffer from respiratory infections, the coughing sickness, digestive problems from bad water or fodder, skin diseases like mange, and musculoskeletal issues like the one your camel now has. In a world without modern veterinary medicine, treating a sick animal was a mixture of practical first aid, traditional herbal remedies, and a healthy dose of what could only be described as superstition. The health of the pack animals was so critical that every large caravan had at least one person, if not several, with specialized knowledge of animal healing. These were the camel doctors. They weren't formally trained veterinarians in our sense, but men who had amassed a huge body of practical knowledge passed down through generations. Al-Amin, after decades on the road, is a pretty good camel doctor himself. He calls over an older man, a Uyghur, who serves as the caravan's primary animal healer. The man, named Jafar, has a face as wrinkled as a dried date and hands stained with the juices of 100 different herbs. He examines your camel with a quiet intensity, even smelling its breath and looking at the color of its gums. After a long moment, he concurs with Al-Amin's diagnosis. The treatment he prescribes is a fascinating window into ancient medicine. First, the practical part. He declares that your camel cannot carry a load for at least a week. Your cargo will have to be distributed among other camels in the caravan, a favor you will be expected to repay later. This is a huge blow, but it's better than the alternative. Next comes the treatment itself. Jafar produces a pouch filled with a pungent-smelling collection of dried leaves, roots, and powders. He mixes a portion of this with hot water, creating a thick, dark poultice. He tells you to apply this wrap to the camel's swollen shoulder twice a day. The ingredients are a trade secret, a proprietary blend of local herbs believed to have anti-inflammatory properties. This is the herbal medicine component. Then comes the part that seems stranger to your modern sensibilities. Jafar takes a small, sharp knife and, after chanting a short prayer, makes a tiny, shallow cut on the camel's ear, letting a few drops of blood well up. This is bloodletting, a common medical practice in many ancient cultures, from Europe to China. The belief was that it would release bad humors or stagnant blood that were causing the illness. While it seems bizarre to us, it was considered a standard and essential part of treatment. A particularly strange and little documented folk remedy for certain camel ailments was the snakeskin cure. Some traders believed that if a camel was suffering from a particular kind of skin parasite, the best cure was to find a shed snakeskin, grind it into a powder, and mix it with oil to create an ointment. The logic, if any, behind this is lost to time, but it speaks to a world where medicine was deeply intertwined with sympathetic magic, the idea that like cures like, or that an object could transfer its properties. The question of how effective these ancient veterinary practices were is a subject of debate for archaeozoologists and historians of science. Many of the herbal remedies likely had real beneficial pharmacological properties that have since been validated by modern science. The poultice Jafar prescribed might well have contained natural analgesics. However, other practices, like bloodletting for an inflamed joint, were probably ineffective at best and potentially harmful at worst, risking infection. The success of a camel doctor likely depended on their ability to distinguish which cases could be helped by rest and herbs and which were beyond their abilities. They were operating on a system of trial, error, and long-held tradition. For the next week, you are no longer a merchant, you are a full-time nurse. You walk beside your unburdened camel, which limps slowly behind the main caravan. Twice a day, you carefully apply the warm, smelly poultice to its shoulder. You coax it to eat, bringing it the choicest bits of fodder. You talk to it constantly in a low, soothing voice. Your entire focus narrows to the well-being of this one animal.
The other merchants are patient, but you can feel the pressure. Your delay is slowing everyone down. The social fabric of the caravan is being tested. But the code holds. They understand that next time it could be their camel, their livelihood on the line. Slowly, miraculously, the treatment seems to work. Whether it was the herbs, the bloodletting, or simply the week of complete rest, your camel's limp begins to lessen. Its appetite returns. The swelling in its shoulder goes down. By the end of the week, Jafar pronounces it fit to carry a light load. The relief you feel is immense, a physical weight lifting from your own shoulders. You carefully repack your camel, this time with only half its original load, the rest still distributed among your patient companions. As you rejoin the main line of the caravan, you look at your camel with a deeper bond than ever. You have nursed it back from the brink. You have seen its vulnerability and have been reminded in the starkest possible terms that its well-being and your own are one and the same. The camel doctor, with his mix of ancient wisdom and strange ritual, has saved your journey.
As your caravan moves deeper into the heart of Central Asia, you begin to notice something profound. You are witnessing the invisible cargo that Al-Amin spoke of, not just in the markets and oases, but within your own caravan. Your small, mobile community is a microcosm of the grand exchange of ideas that defined the Silk Road. Your camel, laden with its precious silk, is also, unwittingly, a vehicle for philosophy, art, and science. One evening, huddled around the communal fire, you find yourself listening to a conversation between two very different men. One is a Buddhist monk from a monastery near Dunhuang, his head shaved and his robes a simple saffron. He is traveling west to visit sacred sites and collect scriptures. The other is a Nestorian Christian merchant from Persia, identifiable by the small, discreet cross tattooed on his wrist. He is returning home from a trading mission in the East. They are engaged in a quiet, respectful debate, communicating through a shared smattering of Sogdian, the trade language of the region. The Buddhist monk speaks of karma and the cycle of rebirth, of achieving enlightenment through the extinguishing of desire. The Nestorian merchant talks of a single, omnipotent God, of sin and redemption through faith in his Son. You, coming from a background where Confucian and Taoist ideas are the primary philosophical pillars, listen with rapt attention. You don't understand all the theological nuances, but you are struck by the passion and sincerity of both men. They are not trying to aggressively convert each other. Rather, they are explaining their view of the universe, of the meaning of life and death. The other merchants listen too, some nodding, some quietly shaking their heads. No one is hostile. There is an unspoken understanding that the road is wide enough for many different paths to the truth.
This scene, played out countless times around countless campfires, was the very mechanism by which religions spread across continents. Buddhism, born in India, traveled east along these routes, carried by monks and merchants into China, where it transformed the culture, art, and philosophy of the entire nation. The Mogao caves you saw at Dunhuang are a direct, magnificent result of this transmission. Christianity, in its Nestorian form, traveled east, establishing small but resilient communities all the way to the coast of China. Manichaeism, a fascinating and now extinct religion from Persia that blended Zoroastrian, Christian, and Buddhist ideas, also spread along these trade arteries, for a time becoming the official state religion of the powerful Uyghur Haganah. Islam would later sweep west to east along the same paths. Your camel, chewing its cud impassively a few feet away, is part of a caravan that serves as a mobile temple, a traveling seminary, a peripatetic philosophical salon. But it's not just grand religious ideas that are being exchanged. The next day, you watch as a musician in the caravan, a Uyghur man, plays a haunting melody on a lute-like instrument you've never seen before. It has a long neck and a pear-shaped body. He explains, through a series of gestures and a few words of shared vocabulary, that it is a barbat. A Persian merchant's eyes light up. He recognizes it and explains that a similar instrument is popular in his homeland. It's this very instrument that would travel further east to become the Chinese pipa and west to become the European lute, the ancestor of the modern guitar. The music itself, the scales, the rhythms, the melodies, is also part of the exchange, influencing musical tastes thousands of miles away. One of the quirkiest and most debated examples of this invisible transport is the transmission of disease. While we often focus on the positive exchanges, the Silk Road was also a tragically effective conduit for pathogens. The same caravans that carried silk and spices also carried fleas, rats, and microbes. Historians and epidemiologists are still arguing about the role the Silk Road played in some of history's most devastating pandemics. Was the plague of Justinian in the 6th century, which ravaged the Byzantine Empire, fueled by germs that traveled from the east along these trade routes? And what about the Black Death in the 14th century? While it's now widely believed that it spread via maritime routes as well, the overland caravan trails were almost certainly a major contributing factor. It's a sobering thought. The very interconnectedness that created so much wealth and cultural vibrancy also created a terrifying vulnerability. You also see the exchange of technology in small, practical ways. You notice that the Persian merchant uses a different, more efficient type of stove for his cooking, one that uses less fuel. You watch him, learn its design. The Sogdians have a superior method for waterproofing their leather bags using a specific type of wax. You trade a small bronze mirror for a lump of this precious wax and the knowledge of how to apply it. This is technology transfer at its most basic and effective level. Paper, gunpowder, the magnetic compass, all these monumental Chinese inventions made their way to the West along these same routes, often taking centuries to complete the journey, their origins becoming murky and mythologized by the time they arrived. You look at your cargo of silk again. You realize Al-Amin was right. The material goods are only the most obvious part of the trade. The real, world-changing commerce is in the ideas being carried in the minds of the men around you. Each person in this caravan is a library of their culture's knowledge, beliefs, and arts. And as you travel, you are all checking out and borrowing books from one another. Your journey is not just taking you to a new place, it's making you into a new person, your own worldview subtly and irrevocably broadened by the invisible cargo you encounter every day.
This new understanding of the caravan's invisible cargo, the ideas, faiths, and arts traveling with you, makes you see your journey in a different light. The world feels more connected, more complex. But just as you're getting lost in these lofty thoughts, you're brought crashing back to a much stranger, more tangible reality. A few days out from the Fergana Valley, your caravan merges with a smaller, more specialized one, seeking the safety of your numbers for the next leg of the journey. And their cargo is unlike anything you've seen before. At the center of their small convoy are 2 camels, and on their backs are not bundles of silk or chests of spices, but large, sturdy wooden cages. And inside one of these cages is a passenger that makes your own camel shift nervously and let out a low, guttural hiss. It's a cheetah. You stare in disbelief. The animal is beautiful and terrifying, a sleek engine of muscle and speed, currently pacing restlessly in its confinement. Its spotted coat is a marvel, its eyes are sharp and intelligent. A dedicated handler, a man with scars on his arms and an air of calm authority, constantly attends to it, feeding it strips of dried meat and speaking to it in a low, soothing language. Transporting a live, predatory cat across Asia on the back of a camel seems like the height of absurdity. A creature that primarily exists to run very fast, now confined to the plodding 3-mile-per-hour pace of your caravan. Why would anyone do this? The answer lies in the destination, the imperial court of the Tang Emperor in Chang'an. The Chinese nobility were fascinated by exotic animals, and the cheetah, known for its incredible speed, was prized for royal hunts. It was a living status symbol, a demonstration of the emperor's power and the vast reach of his influence. Giving such a gift was a way for a Central Asian ruler to curry favor with the Son of Heaven. This brings you to a major historical debate that still occupies scholars of the Silk Road, the fuzzy line between tribute and trade. When a foreign king sent a gift of cheetahs, or perhaps ostriches, which the Chinese called camel birds, or even a rhinoceros to the emperor, was it a political act of a subordinate acknowledging a superior? Or was it a very clever business transaction? The emperor, upon receiving such a tribute, was socially and politically obligated to give a gift in return. And these return gifts were often worth far more than the original offering: huge quantities of silk, gold, and other precious goods. Many historians now argue that the tribute system was, in many cases, a form of disguised trade, a state-sanctioned and highly profitable enterprise for those who knew how to play the game. The cheetah in the cage is not just a passenger, it's a key that unlocks a treasure chest. But the cheetah isn't the strangest thing you learn about. One evening, Alamin, with a chuckle, tells you about the most impractical luxury item he ever saw transported: ice. You must think he's joking. Ice in the desert? But he's serious. He explains that for the wealthiest rulers in Persia and Central Asia, having chilled drinks or fruit in the middle of a blazing summer was the ultimate display of power. The logistics were mind-boggling. In the dead of winter, servants would be sent high into the mountains to cut massive blocks of ice from frozen lakes. These blocks were then hauled down and stored in deep underground chambers called yakchals, essentially ancient refrigerators. These structures had thick, insulated walls and a conical shape designed to funnel hot air out, keeping the ice frozen for months.
Then, in the summer, when a ruler demanded it, chunks of this ice would be broken off, packed densely in chests lined with thick layers of felt and straw, and transported by the fastest riders or camels to the palace, often arriving, after a frantic journey, as a block of slushy, half-melted, but still miraculously cold water. It was an act of almost comical extravagance, a war against nature waged for the sake of a cool drink.
This opens your eyes to the sheer variety of goods that moved along these routes. It wasn't just silk. You see a merchant with a collection of rare plants and seeds, carefully wrapped in damp moss. He's transporting grapevines, alfalfa, and carrots, plants native to the West, to be cultivated in China. In the other direction, rhubarb, a plant prized in the West for its medicinal properties, was a major Chinese export. Then there were the mineral oddities. One merchant in the new group has a small, heavily guarded chest filled with asbestos. He pulls out a piece of cloth woven from it and, to your astonishment, holds it in the campfire. It glows red hot, but does not burn. When he pulls it out, it's completely unharmed. In the West, it was known as salamander's wool, believed to be the fleece of a mythical lizard that lived in fire. Its fireproof qualities made it a magical curiosity for the rich. The strangest cargo of all, perhaps, was human. Acrobats, musicians, dancers, and other entertainers from Central Asia were highly sought after in Chang'an. A troupe of performers might join a caravan, paying for their passage by entertaining the merchants at night, their ultimate goal to secure a wealthy patron in the capital. You look around the caravan, this slow-moving river of commerce. It's a traveling bazaar of the bazaar. Your cargo of silk, which once seemed so exotic, now feels positively conventional. This road carried not just what was valuable or practical, but what was desired, no matter how whimsical, impractical, or strange. It was a testament to human ingenuity, curiosity, and an insatiable appetite for the novel and the luxurious. Your camel, still casting a wary eye on the caged cheetah, plods on, carrying a piece of this vast, weird, and wonderful mobile marketplace on its back, heading steadily towards the fabled blue-domed city that is now just a few weeks away, Samarkand.
The land has been changing for days. The harsh, rocky terrain of the foothills has given way to a wide, impossibly fertile plain. You are following the life-giving Zarafshan River, a name that in Persian means the spreader of gold. Looking at the lush fields of cotton, the groves of apricots and peaches, and the sprawling vineyards, you understand why. The air is no longer thin and cold, nor is it dry and dusty. It's soft, warm, and carries the sweet scent of fruit blossoms and damp, rich earth. The caravan moves with a renewed sense of purpose. The end of this long, arduous leg of the journey is near.
Then you see it. At first, it's just a shimmering on the horizon, a flash of brilliant color against the green of the valley and the brown of the distant hills. As you draw closer, the vision solidifies into a skyline of domes and minarets, all clad in tiles of a blue so vivid it hurts your eyes. It's a breathtaking, electric blue, a deep cobalt, and a dazzling turquoise that seems to drink the sunlight. This is Samarkand. It's not just a city, it's a jewel set in the heart of Asia. You've heard it called the Gem of the East, and now you see that it isn't an exaggeration. It's like the entire city decided to wear the sky as a hat. Unlike the rigid, grid-like formality of Chang'an, Samarkand feels more organic, more alive. The caravan doesn't enter through a single massive imperial gate, but is absorbed into a sprawling, chaotic network of suburbs and workshops on the city's edge before passing through its sun-baked earthen walls. The city you're entering is known to archaeologists as Afrasiab, the ancient site of Samarkand.
The noise is overwhelming, a vibrant, multilingual cacophony that makes the West Market of Chang'an seem almost sedate. This is the true crossroads of the world. You hear Sogdian, Persian, Arabic, Turkish, and a dozen other tongues you can't identify. The faces in the crowd are a testament to the city's position. Pale-skinned merchants from the west, dark-eyed Indians from the south, Turkic nomads from the northern steppes, and Han Chinese like yourself, all mingling in the dusty, crowded streets. You make your way to a vast caravanserai, unload your weary but triumphant camel, and for the first time in months you feel a sense of profound accomplishment. You have made it. You have crossed the deserts and the mountains. You have brought your precious cargo to the heart of Central Asia. The next day, you venture into the city's main bazaar, and it is a sensory explosion. The air is thick with the scent of spices you've never smelled before, cloves and cardamom, mixed with the aroma of baking bread and roasting meat. Stalls are piled high with goods that have traveled from the other direction. You see iridescent glassware from Syria, heavy silver plates from Persia, thick furs from the northern forests, and amber from the distant Baltic Sea. Your silk is a prized commodity here, but it is just one thread in a vast global tapestry of trade. It's here you encounter one of Samarkand's most famous and revolutionary products, a piece of technology that will change the world. You see a scribe in the market, but he's not writing on clumsy bamboo slips, expensive silk, or rough parchment. He is using sheets of something wonderfully white, thin, and smooth, paper. This is Samarkand paper, famous throughout the Islamic world for its superior quality. The story of how Samarkand became a paper-making powerhouse is a perfect Silk Road tale. It's a well-documented historical fact that the secret was extracted from Chinese prisoners of war. In 751 AD, the Abbasid Caliphate and the Tang dynasty fought a major battle at the Talas River. The Tang forces lost, and among the prisoners taken back to Samarkand were skilled Chinese artisans, including papermakers. They were forced to share their knowledge, and the Sogdians, being brilliant innovators, not only learned the craft but improved upon it, using local materials like flax and linen rags to create a paper that was smoother and more durable than anything seen before. This technology would then spread from Samarkand further west into Europe, eventually fueling the Renaissance. You touch a sheet of it, marveling at its texture. It's another piece of invisible cargo made tangible. The city itself is a historical puzzle. You are standing in the Samarkand of your time, the city known as Afar-Siab. But this entire vibrant city will, in a few centuries, be completely destroyed by the armies of Genghis Khan, leveled so thoroughly that it will be abandoned. When the great conqueror Timur, or Tamerlane, makes Samarkand his capital in the 14th century, he will choose to rebuild it slightly to the south of the ruins of the city you are now standing in. Historians and archaeologists are still debating the exact reasons for this shift. Was the old site on the hill of Afar-Siab too difficult to supply with water after the Mongol destruction of the canal systems? Was it a symbolic act, a desire to build a new, grander city from scratch, rather than on the bones of the old one? The answer lies buried under the layers of dust and time. For now, though, the city is vibrantly alive. It is the center of your world. You have successfully navigated the first half of your epic journey. The dangers of the road are behind you for a time, replaced by the new challenges of the marketplace. You have to find a buyer for your silk, negotiate a good price in a foreign currency, and purchase new goods for the long journey home. You return to your camel in the caravanserai. You give the faithful beast an extra ration of the best fodder, stroking its coarse neck. You and this shaggy, cantankerous creature have done it. You have arrived at the Blue City. The long exhale of relief you let out feels like it carries the dust of 1,000 miles with it. The real work of the merchant is about to begin. The relative peace of arriving in Samarkand quickly gives way to a new kind of stress, the art of the deal. The caravanserai and the surrounding bazaar are not just places of rest, they are fierce arenas of commerce. Your success or failure on this entire expedition hinges on the next few days. You need to sell your silk and other goods for the highest possible price, and then use that profit to buy Western goods that will be valuable back in Chang'an. Your first challenge is finding the right buyer. You can't just set up a stall in the market. You are a foreign wholesaler, not a local retailer. You need to connect with the big textile merchants, the brokers who buy in bulk to supply the workshops and markets of the entire region, and even for re-export further west. Al-Amin, your caravanbashi, is your guide here. For a percentage of the final sale, he uses his network of contacts, built over decades of trade, to introduce you to the right people. He brings you to the sprawling courtyard of a wealthy Sogdian merchant named Rashan. The place is a whirlwind of activity. Servants rush back and forth, porters unload goods from other caravans, and scribes sit in shaded corners, meticulously recording transactions on sheets of that fine Samarkand paper. Rashan himself is an imposing figure, dressed in fine, brightly colored robes, reclining on a pile of plush cushions while sipping a cool drink. He exudes an air of relaxed power. The negotiation is a slow, elaborate dance, a piece of theater that has been performed for centuries. You don't just walk in and state your price. That would be considered crude and unsophisticated. First, there are pleasantries. You are offered tea, a green tea from China, a sign that Rashan is a man of cosmopolitan tastes. You exchange polite inquiries about each other's health and the journey.
Then you unveil your product. With a sense of drama, you unroll the bolt of crimson silk. You let it catch the light, showing off its perfect weave and vibrant color. Rajan's experienced eyes examine it closely. He rubs the fabric between his fingers, holds it up to the light, even sniffs it. He shows no emotion, his face a mask of polite indifference, but you can see a flicker of appreciation in his eyes. He knows quality when he sees it. Then the haggling begins. He makes the first offer, speaking in Persian, which has become the dominant language of commerce in the city, with Al-Amin translating the nuances. The offer is, of course, insultingly low. You respond with a counteroffer that is optimistically high. And so it goes, back and forth, a verbal chess match. Rajan points out a minuscule, almost invisible flaw in the weave. You counter by praising the rarity of the dye. He complains about the instability of the market. You mention rumors of a new demand for silk from a visiting Byzantine envoy. During this process, you encounter one of the biggest headaches of international trade, the chaos of currency and measurements. Rajan makes his offer in silver dirhams, the standard coin of the Abbasid Caliphate. You are used to thinking in terms of Chinese strings of copper cash or silver tals. The exchange rate is not fixed. It fluctuates based on the purity of the metal and the current supply and demand for each currency. You have to do complex mental calculations, factoring in the weight and purity of his coins versus yours. Then there's the problem of measurement. You sold the silk by the Chinese zhang, a little over 3 meters. Rajan wants to buy it by the Persian gauze, about 1 meter. The conversion is not just a matter of math, it's another point of negotiation. This is why successful merchants were often skilled mathematicians. Here, you might encounter a curious and clever tool used by traders, the abacus of the mind. While the Chinese used a physical abacus, many Central Asian merchants were trained to perform complex calculations mentally using visualization techniques. This gave them a significant advantage in negotiations, allowing them to quickly assess offers and counteroffers in different currencies and units. It was a trade secret as valuable as any map. The debate among historians about Silk Road economics often centers on the concept of trust. In a world with no international commercial law, no letters of credit, and no way to enforce a contract once a caravan had left, how did trade on this scale even happen? The answer, many scholars believe, was a system based on reputation and kinship. Merchants like Roshan would only deal with caravan leaders like Al-Amin, whom they had a long-standing relationship with. Deals were often sealed not with a written contract, but with a handshake and a vow. Your personal honor and your family's name were your credit rating. Breaking a deal could get you blacklisted, making it impossible to trade in that city ever again. After hours of intense negotiation, you finally agree on a price. It's less than your most optimistic hope, but significantly more than his initial offer. It represents a handsome profit. The deal is sealed. Roshan's scribes count out the payment, stacks of heavy silver dirhams that you carefully weigh and inspect. The relief is immense, but your work is only half done. You have converted your goods into cash. Now you must do the reverse. You have to reinvest this silver into goods that will turn a profit back home. You spend the next few days exploring the markets, not as a tourist, but as a buyer. You examine Syrian glass, Persian carpets, and Indian spices. You talk to other merchants, gathering intelligence. What is in demand in Chang'an? What is rare? You are no longer the naive novice who nervously bought a camel weeks ago. You have crossed the world's harshest landscapes, and you have just successfully navigated the treacherous currents of the Samarkand market. You are a seasoned merchant now, and it's time to shop for your return journey. The feeling of selling your silk is liberating, but the weight of the silver coins in your coffers brings a new kind of anxiety. Money is useless until it's converted back into goods. Now you must transform from a seller into a savvy buyer, playing the entire game in reverse. Your goal is to fill your camel's saddle pack with treasures from the West that will dazzle the markets of Chang'an. You spend days scouring the bazaars of Samarkand, your senses on high alert. This is no idle shopping trip, it's a high-stakes treasure hunt. You walk past stalls overflowing with everyday goods, pottery, textiles, foodstuffs, and focus on the rare and the exotic. You are looking for items that are lightweight, high value, and, most importantly, unavailable back home. Your first major purchase is glassware. In a quiet, shaded workshop, you meet a merchant who has just received a shipment from Tyre or Sidon in Syria, the heart of Roman and Byzantine glassmaking for centuries. The quality is unlike anything you've seen. The Chinese were masters of ceramics and bronze, but their glass technology was primitive, producing glass that was often opaque and brittle. What this merchant has is magical. He shows you delicate cups and bottles of a stunning translucent blue-green, so clear you can see right through them. He even has a few pieces of millefiori glass, where slices of colored glass canes are fused together to create intricate flower-like patterns. This technology was a closely guarded secret of the Syrian artisans. To the elite of Chang'an, a perfect clear glass goblet was a symbol of ultimate luxury, a piece of solidified magic from the far reaches of the world. After another intense haggling session, you secure a small chest of the finest pieces, carefully packing each one in soft wool fleece.
Next, you seek out something with a more mysterious allure: cobalt. You are led to a dealer in a dusty corner of the market who trades in minerals. He shows you a small, heavy bag filled with a coarse, dark, unassuming powder. This is raw cobalt ore, likely mined in the mountains of Persia. On its own, it's not much to look at, but you know its true value. This is the very substance that Chinese potters would use to create the iconic blue and white porcelain that would later take the world by storm. At this point in history, the Tang dynasty was famous for its three-color Sankai glazes. But the use of pure cobalt blue was still a rare and highly prized technique. This dark powder was the secret ingredient to creating a color as vibrant as the sky. You buy as much as you can afford, knowing that the master potters in Chang'an will pay a premium for it. Here, you stumble upon a quirky piece of historical trade trivia, the trade in scents. You find a merchant specializing in perfumes and incense from the Arabian Peninsula. He has lumps of frankincense and myrrh, resins that were famous in the West since antiquity, but also exotic fragrances like jasmine oil and rosewater. The process of distilling rose petals to create concentrated rosewater was perfected in Persia and was a complete novelty in China. You purchase several small, tightly sealed glass vials of the precious liquid. The Tang court was obsessed with fragrance. Nobles would perfume their robes, their homes, and even the ink they wrote with. This tiny vial of concentrated floral scent would be a powerful status symbol. The question of what, precisely, the Chinese wanted from the West is a fascinating subject for historians. Unlike the Roman Empire, which had a massive trade deficit with the East due to its insatiable hunger for silk, China's economy was largely self-sufficient. They didn't need Western goods in the same way. So what drove the westbound trade? The answer seems to be a desire for luxury, novelty, and status. The Chinese elite craved the exotic. Heavenly horses from Fergana, strange animals, musical instruments, foreign dancers, and rare materials like your cobalt and glass that they couldn't produce themselves. The return journey of the Silk Road was not driven by necessity, but by desire. It's a point historians still debate. Was the Silk Road a balanced two-way street, or was it always fundamentally an artery pumping Eastern luxuries to a hungry West with only a trickle of niche goods flowing back?
Finally, your cargo is complete. You have a chest of Syrian glass, a heavy bag of cobalt ore, vials of rosewater, and a few smaller curiosities, like a small, intricately woven Persian rug whose geometric patterns are unlike anything in Chinese art. You have successfully converted your silver back into a diverse portfolio of treasures. You spend your last evening in Samarkand in the caravanserai, carefully packing your new goods for the journey home. The process is familiar, yet different. Before, you were packing with the nervous energy of a novice. Now, you work with a quiet confidence. You know exactly how to balance the load, how to tie the knots, how to protect your fragile and precious cargo. Your camel, well-rested and well-fed, seems to sense the shift. The journey ahead is the one that leads home. You look at the big, shaggy beast, which has been your constant companion through desert and mountain, sickness and storm. You are a team. The next morning, as the sun casts its first golden light on the blue domes of Samarkand, Al-Amin's horn sounds. It's a familiar call, but this time it fills you not with anxiety, but with a sense of anticipation. The caravan assembles, smaller now, as many merchants have gone their separate ways. But the core group, those returning east, remains. You take your place in the line. You are no longer just a silk merchant. You are a purveyor of glass and cobalt, of fragrances and ideas. You are a westbound trader turned eastbound. With a gentle tug on the lead rope, you and your camel turn your backs on the jewel of the East and begin the long, slow, patient journey home.
The journey home is a different experience. The path is the same, but you are seeing it with new eyes. The terror of the unknown has been replaced by the weary ache of familiarity. You know where the difficult passes are, which oases have the sweetest water, and which stretches of desert are the most unforgiving. The rhythm of the caravan, the swaying gait of your camel, the jingle of the bells, it's all become the normal texture of your life. This long, monotonous rhythm gives you something you didn't have on the way out: time to think. As you plod along, your gaze fixed on the shaggy, undulating back of your camel, you begin to see it not just as your partner, but as a central character in a much larger story. You start to connect the dots you've collected along the way, realizing that this unassuming, plodding creature has shaped human history in ways that are both profound and profoundly overlooked. You pass the sun-bleached ruins of a small, forgotten watchtower, half swallowed by the sand. On the way out, you barely noticed it. Now, you see it for what it is: a fossil. It's evidence of a trade route that once flourished and then died. And you realize the lifeblood of that route, and therefore that watchtower, was the camel. Cities like Palmyra in the Syrian desert or the oasis towns you rested in are not natural occurrences. They are miracles of logistics. They exist only because a creature evolved that could carry immense weight with minimal water across vast, inhospitable distances. The camel didn't just travel the Silk Road. It was the thread that allowed the beads of civilization, the oases and trading posts, to be strung together. When trade routes shifted, often to the sea, these camel-dependent cities withered, their stone bones left for the sand to reclaim. The rise and fall of entire cities was written in the hoofprints of your beast.
A few days later, a band of Turkic nomads on horseback shadows your caravan for a time, their movements swift and fluid. It makes you think of warfare. Back in Chang'an, the military prides itself on its cavalry, the powerful Fergana horses being the ultimate military asset. But out here, you've heard stories of another kind of cavalry, camel cavalry. The ancient Persian and Parthian empires used them to great effect. Arab armies later perfected their use. A warrior on a camel had a height advantage over infantry and could use a bow or a long spear with devastating reach. But their greatest weapon was psychological. Horses that had never encountered camels before were often terrified by their strange smell and guttural cries, refusing to charge and throwing entire cavalry formations into chaos. Furthermore, a camel could carry its own water and supplies for days, making it the perfect vehicle for long-range desert raids. This is a topic of endless debate around the campfire. How effective were they really? Historians to this day argue about the true military impact of the camel. Were they a decisive shock weapon, a game-changer on the battlefield? Or were they primarily a logistical asset, a way to move armies and supplies, with their combat role being more of a niche application? Ancient accounts from different cultures offer conflicting views. Some praise them as nearly invincible desert warships, while others describe them as clumsy and vulnerable if a battle line held firm. The truth is likely complex, but there is no doubt that the ability to field armies in arid regions was a power granted almost exclusively by the camel. But the most astonishing realization comes to you one evening in a very simple, mundane moment. You are watching one of the Persian merchants, a man from a desert tribe, milk his camel. He fills a small wooden bowl with the rich, frothy milk and drinks it with relish. And then it hits you. For you, milk is something you stopped drinking regularly as a child. Like most adults in the Han Chinese world, you lack the enzyme to properly digest lactose. But this man and his entire people can drink it their whole lives.
You realize you are witnessing evolution in action. The camel hasn't just shaped cities and armies, it has shaped the very genes of the people who depend on it. For desert-dwelling peoples, camel's milk, rich in vitamins and water, was a vital source of nutrition in an environment where almost nothing else was available. Over thousands of years, a genetic mutation that allowed adults to continue producing lactase, the enzyme that digests milk sugar, became a massive survival advantage. This trait, called lactase persistence, spread through these populations. You are looking at a man whose DNA has been directly altered by his ancestors' relationship with this animal. The bond is not just cultural or economic, it's biological. Your shaggy, plodding companion is a co-author of the human genome. You look over at your own camel, which is contentedly chewing its cud, utterly oblivious to the grand historical and biological forces it represents. It is a creature of immense strength and endurance, yet it is also a quiet, unsung architect of civilization. It has carried silk, soldiers, ideas, religions, and even the seeds of genetic change on its back. Without it, the world you know would not exist. The map would be different, the empires would be different, and the people themselves would be different. This journey has been about more than just profit. It has been a lesson in seeing the profound in the mundane, in recognizing the world-shaping power of the plodding, patient, and truly heroic Bactrian camel.
The Hexy corridor welcomes you back like an old familiar friend. The passage of time has painted the landscape with the colors of a different season, but the shapes of the mountains and the curve of the river are etched into your memory. You pass through the Jade Gate, but this time it is not a gateway to the unknown, but a doorway back to the world you belong to. The guards look at your weathered face, your worn but sturdy clothes, and the magnificent, well-cared-for animal you lead, and they see not a hopeful novice, but a veteran of the road. They give you a nod of respect that feels more valuable than any coin. The final weeks of the journey are a blur of patient plodding. The anxiety is gone, replaced by a deep, bone-weary longing for home. And then, one afternoon, you see it, the unmistakable, soaring silhouette of the great wild goose pagoda against the hazy sky. The walls of Chang'an. You are home. Plunging back into the city is a shock. After months in the vast, silent emptiness, the sheer density of people, the noise, the smells, the vibrant chaos of the metropolis is overwhelming. You navigate the crowded streets to the same West Market you departed from, what feels like a lifetime ago. You feel like a stranger in your own city. Your skin tanned dark by a sun your neighbors have not felt, your mind filled with landscapes they cannot imagine. The business of selling your Western goods is swift. The Syrian glassware causes a sensation among the wealthy merchants who cater to the nobility. The cobalt ore is snatched up by a representative from the imperial kilns. And the vials of rosewater presented to the ladies of a high-ranking official's household earn you more than just profit. They earn you valuable connections. Your journey has been a resounding success. You are no longer just a merchant. You are a wealthy man.
With your profits secured and your saddle packs empty, you are faced with one final, bittersweet task: the fate of your camel. What happens to a hero when the war is over? You have grown deeply attached to the stoic, shaggy beast that was your partner through every trial. But you live in the city now. You have no pasture, no need for a long-haul transport animal. This is the unsentimental final chapter for most Silk Road camels. They were not typically retired to a comfortable pasture. They were working animals, assets to be liquidated. You find a reputable dealer in the livestock market, perhaps the very same one you bought the camel from. He inspects the animal and sees it is still strong and healthy, a proven veteran of the road. A deal is made. Your camel will likely be sold to another merchant for shorter regional journeys, or perhaps to a farmer in the agricultural lands outside the city. This was a common practice, a slightly strange piece of the trade network's logistics. These used camels, with their proven track record, were highly valued. You hand over the lead rope, the same rope you took with trembling hands all those months ago. The camel gives you one last, long, indifferent blink of its luxuriously lashed eyes, and then plods away with its new owner, its bell jingling a familiar rhythm that is now fading from your life. As you watch it disappear into the market crowd, you are left to ponder the journey's true meaning. This is a question historians themselves are still grappling with. What was the ultimate legacy of the Silk Road? Was it the economic impact, the silk, the glass, the gold that flowed between empires and funded their golden ages? Or was the true, lasting impact cultural? The spread of Buddhism that reshaped Asia, the transmission of paper that fueled the European Renaissance, the quiet exchange of ideas, art, and philosophies that subtly wove the world together? There is no simple answer. The road was both a highway for treasure and a conduit for thought, and it's impossible to untangle the two. You stand alone in the market, the jingle of your camel's bell now just an echo in your memory. You are a different person from the one who left. The desert has scoured you, the mountains have tested you, and the road has taught you. You have seen the vastness of the world and your own small place within it. The journey is over. The silence it has left behind is deafening.
And so the sound of the camel's bell fades, becoming just a faint echo carried on the wind, dissolving into the vast, quiet spaces of the desert. The story is over. The dust of the journey settles, and the vibrant colors of the Samarkand market soften into the gentle darkness of your room. Let that echo fade completely, replaced by the soft, steady hum of the fan or the quiet stillness of your own home. The weight of the silk and the grit of the sand are gone, leaving only the soft, comfortable weight of your blanket. Feel the journey recede, like a dream you are slowly waking from. The faces of the merchants around the campfire, the sight of the blue domes, the steady, swaying rhythm of the camel's gait. Let them all drift away on a gentle current, leaving behind only a sense of peace. There are no more mountains to climb tonight, no more deserts to cross. There is only the deep, slow rhythm of your own breath, a quiet anchor in the peaceful harbor of the present moment. Let the story dissolve into the silence and allow that silence to hold you. There is nothing left to do but drift, to sink deeper into the quiet, and to let the unsung heroes of your own day's journey rest. Your own adventures will be waiting for you in the landscape of your dreams.